Hello, everyone, and welcome in to another episode of the Payne and Drain Show following yet another Lions victory. I'm your host, Zach Payne. With me today is my co host, as always, Alex Drain. And Alex, another thumping of an opponent by the Lions, 52 to 14 over the Tennessee Titans. How are we feeling today?
Pretty good overall. That was a strange game. One of the weirder games I think I can remember watching that you don't see that amount of return yardage. You don't see that degree of skewed field position very much. So it was definitely a unique one and one of the largest margins of victory the Lions have had that I can ever remember. So unusual game, but certainly stuff to talk about.
Yeah, it was indeed a weird one, and yet the Lions put a 50 burger on the board for the first time this century. And I believe it was 1997 the last time that they accomplished that feat. It is so we'll hop right into the offense because the note I had put down for to start this conversation is simply short fields, but the Lions made short work of the Titans, going 5 for 5 in the red zone. Despite only having 61 net passing yards, the Lions had 4 passing touchdowns. It was not a day for a ton of production from the offense if your name was not Jameer Gibbs. And yet, the offense did exactly what they needed to do to move the ball and get into the end zone. Let's start first with the highlight, which is Jameer Gibbs and that run game. This has been the best stretch of football. Last 3-4 weeks, Jameer Gibbs has been absolutely on fire. He's been dominating. I think he's over 6 yards a carry on the season right now. Um, he's been amazing. What have you loved seeing from Gibbs and the running game as a whole?
The acceleration for Gibbs really showed out in this game. The long touchdown run finds the hole, hits it, and then he's just gone. That was the longest run of his career, I believe.
Yep.
70, 75 yards. He had a couple nice runs on top of that, just showing his speed, his real, explosive ability that we've seen to some degree at points, but not as much as you'd like to think. So it's good to see that coming through. David Montgomery had some nice runs on that first drive where he gets a rushing touchdown to cap it off. We didn't see him a lot after that, but the offense just didn't run many plays. That's kind of the story of this game to some degree. You look at total yardage, it's a little bit misleading just because the Lions only had the ball for 24 and a half minutes in this game. They only ran 47 plays. So there weren't a lot of opportunities for us to really see what the offense could do, especially when you consider that about a quarter of those plays were garbage time-ish plays, like towards the end of the game. I mean, it was a really, really shortened offensive performance, but what we saw from the run game is what we've come to expect. Two really good running backs moving the ball up and down the field.
Yeah, and like I think you can't really put too much stock into the fourth quarter in general because that was the Hendon Hooker experience, which he's just running the clock out with Craig Reynolds. Is what it is. Those play there's probably 8 plays that were essentially useless in this game because it's just the Lions trying to get out of here. Because I remember watching the game and I was like, man, all right, we're into garbage time. Let's see Hendon Hooker. And I look up, there's still 11 minutes on the clock or something like that. It's like, dude, the entire fourth quarter was garbage time and just waiting. I'm very grateful that the Titans on their final drive just decided they're going to run the ball every single play to get out of there because that saved us probably a good 10 minutes of them trying. Um, now, yeah, Jameer Gibbs has been electric. He has been like, I talked about this earlier in the season saying that he quietly has become like a Pro Bowl caliber back, and he just keeps ascending. It's quite shocking to see how he keeps getting better week after week. Like I said, averaging over 6 yards a carry on the season, he has been absolutely dynamite. And obviously, you hope that keeps up going into a huge matchup against the Packers. Montgomery, we've seen this throughout the season. Sometimes it's just not a David Montgomery kind of game. I suspect next week will be because the Lions, that's exactly what happened in Lambeau last year, was the Lions relied heavy on David Montgomery. But this is one of those weeks. Gibbs was the guy. Monty wasn't. Happens. Monty still gets in the end zone, still has a pretty nice day. Um, the run blocking was pretty good, but we do need to talk about an area that was not as good, which is pass protection. And the Lions' offensive line surprisingly struggling to keep Jared Goff on his feet.
It's the one weakness we've seen kind of from the offense this season. The Taylor Decker storyline continues to be a storyline. Had another clean sack against. I mean, it's kind of like one a week at this point, where he just gets smoked on one rep. Some issues with Glasgow as well. It's kind of coming from all over on the line. Not as much from Ragnow, not as much from Sewell, but the guards and left tackle. Definitely an area of concern. I did think that Goff sacked himself on one occasion. I think it was a second down play early in the game where he had time to find a receiver and there were some open targets underneath. He didn't get it out. Then he started running backwards for like a 15-yard sack. That looked like a 2021 Jared Goff play. But yeah, there is continuing to be some pass pro issues. Leads to Goff getting rolled up on in this game. They're in for a bit of a test this week with Rashawn Gary and some of the guys the Packers have, and it's definitely something to keep an eye on because it's been lingering through the course of this season.
Yeah, and the Packers are a team with a number of good young pass rushers. So I'd put my concern relatively high. This is not an area that we were concerned with coming into the season, but as you said, it's a developing issue, which is surprising because coming into the season, I said, you know what, the addition of Kevin Zeitler, I think the run blocking might take a hit, but pass protection should be even better because Zeitler's been a great pass protector in his career, which means the Lions' pass protection just got better. And what we've seen is Taylor Decker. I think this is the first year of his extension. It's not going great. Graham has really struggled on the left side of the line. And I think realistically, we probably are in a scenario where next season, 2025, you're looking at Decker still a left tackle. You move Graham back to right and you let Zeitler walk. And then you have Christian Mahogany maybe or someone else starting at left guard because the contrast between how good Graham is on the right versus the left, it is very notable. He was lights out last year, and this year he just doesn't look the same. He does not look like the same level of player that he was last year, and that has really, really hurt the Lions. So it is something to monitor. Goff, I mean, the spin rollout thing that he does, death to that. As always, we hate that. Not much else to say. He was pretty efficient in this game. The Lions still, I think it was 24 touchdowns to 19 incompletions over the last 5 weeks. So in that department, they're still lights out. It's going to be very interesting though, because Jameson Williams still suspended for another week. Khalif Raymond had a nice game, but more on special teams. Tim Patrick, Allen Robinson, not really in this game. No receivers were really in this game, but there was one guy who actually had a good day. Sam Laporta. Welcome back to relevance, buddy. That on National Tight Ends Day, Sam Laporta has a good day. Was that encouraging at all to you, or is it kind of just run of the mill? They needed to throw to someone.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice sign to see, but overall not the biggest deal in the world. I never really lost faith in him. Had his trick play touchdown catch from David Montgomery. We're up now to 2 of those on the year. We need Gibbs to throw one. We need JMO to throw one, and maybe Laporta to throw one at some point. Gotta mix those in over the course of the year. But it was a nice game from Laporta, and Brock Wright got himself a touchdown too. I was exhausted by the amount of references over the course of multiple NFL broadcasts that day with the National Tight End Day stuff. Shut up! You can say it once. One time per broadcast is enough. Not every single time a tight end catches the ball in any game over the course of the NFL day. Very, very annoying, but it was a good day for Laporta, which is nice to see. You want to get him going, and hopefully they continue to get him some catches. They're going to probably need that this coming week with JMO out against a formidable opponent.
Yep, and Laporta had a pretty good day against them last year, so we'll see. I know we are very Packers focused right now, but it's really because this game coming into it, we said, hey, the Lions should dominate, and they dominated, and now it's really all hands on deck for a pivotal divisional clash against the Packers. Aside from that, Goff, like I said, he was efficient. He did what he needed to do. Some of the play calling, I do want to highlight Khalif Raymond's offensive touchdown, especially those kind of gadget plays where you have a wide receiver doing kind of an orbit motion behind the QB and then running back to the flat. That's the kind of play that, the Lions probably should run more of with Raymond specifically. You can't really run those with JMO because he's so fast that defenses key in on him, and anytime he moves, it draws a lot of attention. But when you have a guy like Raymond who can just he's not as big of a threat to a defense, and so you're able to get away with those kind of cheeky little eye candy motions a lot more. That's something I do want to see. Also, as far as non quarterbacks throwing touchdowns, I think you are missing a very key part of practice notes from the last few weeks. Penei Sewell was throwing passes. If we get a Penei Sewell touchdown pass, I imagine it'll come sometime in December. I will belly flop into the snow. Like that'd be the greatest thing ever. I don't know. This was a bit of a weird day for the offense though, because they weren't really on the field, didn't have to do a whole lot. It is really nice that they are clicking in the red zone, because that's something we highlighted early in the season as something like, hey, we're not worried about this, but they do need to improve. And now we're at a point where the offense is clicking a little too well. Almost, they're averaging 33 points a game, the highest scoring offense in the league. And I think I saw a stat, the most points over a 4-game stretch in NFL history, which seems a little far-fetched considering the Dolphins scored 70 last year, that they didn't match that.
Yeah,
But
I don't think it was, and I think it's Lions history, not
okay,
NFL history. But
must be.
that would make more sense.
Yeah, like regardless, the Lions offense has been lights out, especially over the last few weeks. Do you have any other notes on the offense's day?
Not much outside of the garbage time. We had 2 Isaiah Williams catches. I think were those his first catches,
Those were his
or did he
first
have
two
one
catches.
against Dallas? Yeah,
No, I
yeah,
think it was Raymond who caught the one in Dallas.
yeah. When he came in at Illinois, I believe he played quarterback like that first year. So that's another guy we could have throw
Can we have every
a
wide
pass at
receiver
some
throw a
point.
touchdown?
Yeah. So my only other note is, do you want to see Hendon Hooker do a little more next time? Like if there is
Yeah.
another situation where he comes into garbage time? Like that was my main thought about this. I know he was trying to run out the clock, but I would just like to get him reps. Like you're not in any risk of letting this game come back into competitiveness or
Yeah.
anything. I'd like to see him throw it.
If he throws a pick, he throws a pick. Like, who cares? I know what Craig
Yeah.
Reynolds is. I don't need to see Craig Reynolds run for 2 yards a carry. Like, you might as
Yeah,
well let Hendon run.
into a stacked box as we run the clock out. Like it just feels like you should give him some reps at some point. But that's my only real note there.
I think what will happen is if the Lions season continues on the trajectory it is, the Lions are going to be in play for the number 1 seed. If the Lions have the division and the number 1 seed locked up, you'll see Hendon Hooker start week 18 is my bet. Or at least
I
play
think that's pretty reasonable.
at least a half. Like they might play Goff the first half because it's going to be 2 weeks off if they get the number 1 seed. But Hooker will probably appear in the final little bit of the season, depending on how the Lions do down the stretch. So flipping over to the defense, this is a bit of a weird one because they started out red hot with a Trevor Nowaski interception, and then they got really mid for a stretch. And then after about the halfway point of the second quarter, the Lions clamped down, didn't allow anything rest of the game. It was turnover central all day, with interceptions and forcing fumbles. Amik Robertson had 2 peanut punches in this game, which you love to see. Very weird day. First of all, just in the first quarter and a bit, like when the Titans were looking good, was there anything that long-term concerned you with the Lions defense?
Not really, and the biggest reason is that everyone was not very good in that stretch. Like it wasn't necessarily something you can pinpoint. Calvin Ridley had a lot of success that was pretty frustrating, but he wasn't doing it against one guy. Like he torched Robertson for a deep shot. He beat Arnold. He beat Davis. He was just balling. But like the running success the Titans had was kind of on everybody. Like they're losing the edge. Like McNeil had a weirdly bad game. Linebackers were wandering. It just Branch was missing tackles. I think Campbell missed a tackle. It just seemed like everybody was kind of asleep for about a quarter and a half there, which was really odd. But at least from that lens, when it's happening to everybody, you can kind of just say, you know what? They're just not sharp right now. They're not locked in. It's not something really long term because we have a lot of evidence that all these players are better, as opposed to a scenario where 9 or 10 guys are meeting their expectations and one weak link is getting exposed over and over. So I don't really know what to chalk it up to, but it was pretty bad there. The first half, they allowed in total 269 yards on 37 plays for 7.3 yards per play. The first 4 drives, 181 yards on 19 plays. It was a very bad opening to the game, but then they got a lot better, so I don't know, shrug.
Yeah, I for one was a little annoyed that they were making Mason Rudolph look like an NFL quarterback,
Hey, he
but
threw some dimes. Like, you got
which
to give
is
him credit on
yeah,
a couple of those throws.
some of the
That
Ridley
one
ones were
touchdown.
the
Yeah, yeah.
like the one where Ridley torched well, maybe not torched, but beat Robertson downfield. Like it was a good ball. Like I'll give
Yeah,
him credit for
that
that.
slant touchdown was really good too. Like fit into a tight window with decent coverage. There's like
That's one
the
where
fade that's really good.
the slant touchdown Terrion, I don't know what happened on that rep, but Terrion, for some reason when he's in press sometimes he will take a step to press, and then when the guy makes his move he'll jump like 3 yards away from him and then have to try to recover. And that's exactly why that, like, for those on YouTube, I'll put that play over this clip. Terry Hunt literally just like is 3 yards off of the guy instantly. It was a really bad rep for him. Good throw and everything. Terrion almost recovered, but it's something I've noticed where Terrion, either at the line with press or at the break of a route, if it's a post out, whatever, that's where he loses a guy. If a guy's running like a crosser or a streak or any simple route that doesn't require any sharp cuts, Terrion can cover those easily. But anytime there's a sharp cut, whether it's at the line or in at the apex of the route, he's struggling a little bit to keep up with those. As opposed to Davis, who I thought has had a really good couple of games overall. I don't know. It's just something to note because Terrion's development is obviously very important to the success of this team. So we'll see how that goes. Again, sound like a broken record, but Packers have a lot of wide receivers that they throw to and a lot of quick, agile guys. So that could be a challenge for him next week.
Yeah, I did think he responded decently well. Him and Davis both had PBUs on third down plays that forced punts, which were nice. And we've seen that now a couple weeks with Arnold, where there's some choppiness early, but then he can kind of settle in and make a big pass breakup in a specific situation. That was well timed, well played. Like that's what you want to see. Um, Outside of that, we have to give credit for Kirby Joseph. Another interception. That one was a beautiful one. Reads quarterback's eyes, times it off. Just beautiful jump of the route. The Nowaski interception, good for him. But the dumbass throw from Mason Rudolph getting sacked and just lobbing it up in the air and right to him. So good for him. But I think I'd have to look at this, but I'm pretty sure that was the first interception of the season by a non-safety. Is
Yep.
that correct?
That is correct, and it is funny because that when the quarterback is under pressure and does a pump fake just to get himself more into pressure is like my favorite stupid play that like quarterbacks make because like, oh no, there's a guy running at me, better pump fake to do nothing. And then he just flings like a Kyler Murray-esque interception right to Nowaski. He'll take it. Nowaski did get beat on the Rudolph touchdown run, which was awkward, but he had a nice day. I don't know. He looks fine. He looks like a solid enough replacement for Derek Barnes for now. I don't know when Barnes is supposed to be back. I think we probably got another 2 or 4 weeks on that. We'll
At
see.
least.
Yeah, we'll see. He'll be back probably December, maybe. Hopefully by playoffs. But for now, you could survive with Nowaski, assuming you get some help in another area, the pass rush. This was a game where the Lions were throwing all of their box of scraps at the edge position just to see what, throw them out at the wall, see what sticks. Um, I didn't really notice anything too much from the edge group. And more it seems like there will be a trade. And it seems like Zadarius Smith is kind of the one that's going to be shooting. Obviously, the Lions miss out on Uche, which we'll talk about later. But is there, like, if the Lions did not make a trade, how detrimental would it be for their hopes of a Super Bowl?
I think it would definitely knock them down a bit. At the same time, I do think that this is still a really good team, even as currently constructed, because they do a lot of things well, and I think the NFC is pretty weak, so they would certainly have a shot because they're blowing teams out without Aiden Hutchinson at the moment. But that said, I do think they need to get at least somebody. I didn't see a ton from the pass rush in this game. Anzalone gets a sack on a blitz that looked like last year. Nice play. Outside of that, I don't recall a lot. There was one rep I liked from number 69, Mohammed, I think is the name there.
Hmm.
Had to look that one up on the on the roster because I didn't remember him. But outside of that, it was just kind of hit or miss. You see moments from your Nowaskis and guys like that, but they do need help and they do need to make a move of some kind just to give some reinforcement. Although we should note that Josh Pascal missed this game, and that is a notable factor.
Yep. And Pascal, I think, will be a good contributor. He's going to really have a chance to, like, this is his time to step up and prove himself as a starter going forward because, he's in year three, is it? And you have to start thinking about potential contract extensions. This is where you kind of got to put yourself in that conversation because right now he's a solid rotational player who is being forced into a starting role, and we'll see. It's kind of a sink or swim situation. Speaking of sink or swim, I'm about ready to declare the James Houston experience over. I think it's dead. He's once again had another golden opportunity to do literally anything, and I don't think I noticed him at all. So we'll see. Do the Lions have 53 on the roster right now, or do they have 52 still?
I don't know. I'd have to look that up.
If they have 52, it doesn't matter. If they have 53 and they trade for an edge, I'm willing to bet that Houston is the one that might get cut because it's not good. It's not good. And I think he just needs to go to a team that will say, hey, Pinier is back. Go to a bad team. Pinier is back. Go get some sacks. Go, I don't know, make yourself a little bit of money because it's just not working with the Lions right now. I don't know how different of a role he's in compared to his rookie year when he really shined, but from what it looks like, as just someone watching at home, I haven't dug into the film too extensively. Houston just does not seem to have the same juice that he did in his rookie year. Maybe it's because there's tape out on him. Maybe it's because of a different role. I don't know. All I know is it's not working. So there's got to be something that gives that edge, you would think. On the interior, Reader had a fine game. On Uzurike had a fine game. McNeil, like you said, bit of a quiet day, is what it is. I don't know. This was just kind of one of those defensive performances similar to the Falcons game last year, where it's like the defense was good, fine. Like they weren't outstanding in any area. They were very reliant on the turnovers that they created, but they caused them. They still created them, and now the Lions have one of the best turnover margins in the entire league. So it's two interceptions and then three fumbles, I think, right? Or was it two fumbles?
Two fumbles.
Forced by Amik Robertson, who, by the way, is apparently one of the best graded run defenders at corner. Robertson. That's cool. Carlton Davis is, I think, also top 10. Again, we're a little touch and go with PFF, but it's worth noting that that was an area the Lions needed a little bit more help in, and they're getting it so far.
Yeah, that mostly lines up with what I've seen from the tape. I've liked Davis and run defense in particular all year long. Robertson's looked fine to me. It's interesting looking at the Lions defenses here because as a whole, down to down, they've been pretty solid the last few weeks. The first half of this game accepted, but they grade out now if you look at the fancy stat stuff. extremely well on the like EPA per play and DVOA.
DVOA, yeah.
The reason for that is the turnovers. This is pretty similar to something I was discussing last week about Michigan State's offense, which was an offense that is able to move the ball down to down very consistently, but they turn the ball over all the time, and so they get they're the 101st, or they were last week. They were the 101st offense in college football out of like 130 some teams. You watch that offense, you're like, there's no way that's 101st. That's like the 40th or 50th. But the thing is, when you turn it over all the time, it just detonates your advanced metrics because a turnover, particularly one that goes for a pick six or something like that, is so disastrous for your EPA per play that it sets you back. So I think my point with this that I'm trying to make is that I'm a little unsure of how to feel about the number of turnovers and how much that's boosting the numbers. Turnover luck can be kind of fluky. What I will say is that I think the interceptions are more repeatable
Yeah.
because we know Kirby Joseph is a great ball hawk. He's had a lot of interceptions in his career to this point, and we know Brian Branch is one of the very best players. So, and a lot of those are like skill plays, right?
Yeah.
They're not reading the quarterback's eyes, baiting them into throws, stepping up, making the interception. There haven't been very many interceptions thrown right into the chest of a of a linebacker that the quarterback didn't see. It's really just the Nowaski pick this week of like a gift. And their fumble luck hasn't been as good. Fumble luck is what I look for. I mean, it has popped up against the Cowboys and in this game, but I do think the takeaways are somewhat sustainable, but I would like to see continued down to down success rather than just being propped up by turnovers, because I do think if you are propped up by takeaways, eventually it might sort of catch up to you.
Yeah, and I think the biggest area is the third down defense because that is where you need your pass rush the most. And weirdly, the Lions have been awful as a blitzing team. Every time they blitz, it just does not work. I don't know if they're telegraphing them too much. This was an area back in 2021 when Aaron Glenn first came to Detroit with Dan Campbell and everyone. Aaron Glenn was amazing at scheming up weird pressures and unique blitzes to kind of manufacture some pressure. I have not seen that really at all in the last 2 years. I don't know what's kind of going on. They like I know that he loves to play man. We know that he likes to blitz. He just seems to be getting worse at it, and I don't know if that's a personnel issue. I don't know if that's a coaching issue. I don't know. Like, do you have any thoughts on the Lions' blitzing team?
Not really. I will note that it definitely seems like they are not as good at it as they were in the past, but I think it's in Aaron Glenn's bag because we've seen it in the past. I thought he was really good with it late last year when they were blitzing a lot down the stretch. He was able to scheme things up, and like if you remember that Minnesota game in Minnesota, they were able to like the story of that game was they get the minus 15-yard sack of Mullins, and then they
Justin
immediately give
Jefferson,
up
baby.
yeah, they'd immediately give up the 3rd and 24 completion. Like it was such a strange game, but they were getting a lot of those sacks down the stretch. So I think he's still got some stuff. You don't want to put it all on tape yet, and they'll probably need it at some point in the future.
Yep.
Outside of that, I don't really have too many other notes. My one thing is Alex Anzalone had a nice tackle in space on Calvin
Mm.
Ridley on a 3rd and 5 that got them off the field because it set up 4th and 1. It was deep in Titans territory, and that one sent up the punt return touchdown. So very nice play from him on that.
Yep. Again, I think the linebackers have been really good all season at tackling in space, especially like in the past game, where a tight end or a running back or even a wide receiver in that instance catches just a flat route of some kind, and the linebackers have to close in space and make a tackle short of the six. They've been really good at wrapping up in open space and not getting beat too much. So yeah, aside from that, don't really have a ton of notes on the defense. They are going to have a well. We'll see how big of a test it is. It kind of depends on the health of a certain Jordan Love next week. But moving on to this is a section that's usually a throwaway every week, but this week the star of the show, the special teams. Now let's start with the easy ones. Jack Fox averaged 61 yards per punt. Jake Bates, 7 for 7 on extra points, and also hits a career long 51 yarder. Well, NFL career long 51 yarder. And then the returners. Khalil Dorsey has a wonderful 70-yard return. I think that was in the second quarter. And then Khalif Raymond almost gets a punt return early in the game. He comes back in the third quarter and ends up with a 90-yard punt return. I think he was within, Dan Campbell said it in the locker room post game. I think Khalif Raymond was within 20 yards or something of the all-time record for most punt return yards in a game. Absolutely electric day from the special teams against possibly the worst special teams unit I have ever seen. I don't know what Tennessee is doing over there. But the Lions absolutely crushed them in that department.
Yeah, I'm not enough of a special teams ball knower to really discern what the problems are for the Titans, like return or coverage units, just because that's pretty intricate, and I don't study special teams as a hobby or anything. But boy, was it bad! Like 253, I think, or it was 262 return yards. There was another 40 plus return yards from the interceptions and such. Left the Lions overall between defense and special teams with 303 return yards in this game, which is nice because if you go off a total yardage with the skew of time of possession and plays, you're like, wow, the Titans really outplayed the Lions in this game. But then you add in the extra 250 return yard edge that the Lions had, and suddenly you see a much more coherent picture, at least one that's close to the final score. Great day for Khalif Raymond. I mean, I think he's a good punt returner, and I was glad to see him get rewarded in this game. The Dorsey kick return was really cool. I don't know why, if you are the Titans, you're not just blasting the kickoff into the fourth row. Put that thing as far back as possible if you can't cover any returns, apparently. I know they're 32nd in special teams DVOA now. Brutal showing for the Titans. Like, I think the Lions did well. I think the Lions are number one in special teams DVOA, so, like, it's not denigrate Dave Phipp and what they do. I think they're good at it, but we've seen them play every other team in the NFL, and I think we can say that this performance is probably a majority the result of the Tennessee Titans just being god-awful in this phase of the game.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, this was a Khalif Raymond revenge game in some aspects.
Yeah.
The Lions had more special teams return yards than offensive yards in this game, which is the one of the weirdest stat lines I've ever seen, especially in a game where your team puts up 52 points. If you have and you had more return yards than offensive yards, just such a weird game. This is the weirdest blowout I've ever witnessed in my life. I think this was Raymond's second career touchdown return, the other one being against the Jets in 2022. I mean,
That sounds right.
good for him. He's a very good punt returner. And the Lions, I think, missed him a little bit towards the end of last year because I'm pretty sure he missed all of the playoff games, wouldn't it?
I'd have to look, but I remember he was banged up down the stretch.
So hopefully they have him healthy for down the stretch and into the playoffs this year. Because if he can, like a good punt return in a playoff game can be the difference. If you recall the Super Bowl between the Chiefs and Eagles a couple of years ago, it was Kadarius Toney, everyone's favorite, who had a big punt return to set up a huge Chiefs touchdown late in that game. Those are the kind of plays that can win you a Super Bowl, win you an NFC championship, whatever it may be. So it is food for thought. Jake Bates again continues to just be awesome, and I will not complain about him until he misses a field goal because there have been a lot of teams in the league with a lot of kicker issues this season. Aside from that, do you have any other thoughts? Do you have any game theory notes on this game?
No, not that I can think it. Well, we should talk about this. Isn't Lions game theory, but what was up with that Titans first and goal at the one sequence at the end of the first half? They throw it 4 times Yes, it's late in the half, but they had one timeout. How do you never run it in 4 plays from the 1 yard line?
You want me to make this worse? Is I'm pretty sure Tony Pollard leads the league in yards after contact from the 1 yard line. And but hey, anytime you can put the ball in Mason Rudolph's hands 4 times in a row, you got to do it. It's just absolutely brutal. That I don't know what that
Yeah,
was.
doing that against the Lions of all teams is just a real sign of like we are not serious and we are a soft football team. We don't believe in our ability to do any of the physical stuff, even though the Lions would be jamming it right down our throats in this situation. Just it's why bad teams are bad. That's pretty much what you can say about that. I did have a note. Did you know that this was the first time in Detroit Lions history that they have defeated the Tennessee Titans?
I didn't know it was the first time in Lions history. I knew that the Titans had a 6 game win streak against the Lions. I guess I did. Yeah, that makes sense. They haven't been around that long, so
Yeah, the Lions beat the Houston Oilers many times, but since they relocated to Tennessee, they have never beaten them. So that's a fun little note there. Obviously, they only play once every 4 years, and they could play more now with the 17th game, but that would require the Titans getting better, which we'll see about that
or the
one.
Lions
But
getting worse. But
yeah, yeah. I do you remember this because this popped up in Titans discussion on my YouTube suggested. Do you remember the 2012 Titans game?
is that the
The
one that was like a wild shootout with like?
Yes, that goes to overtime. Yeah, it popped up on my YouTube under the tagline, the like craziest fourth quarter in NFL history, and that one I had I remembered the game, but then I went back and looked at the box score and like oh my Lord, like there were so many just insane Stafford era Lions games, but that one has got to be up there. The Lions are down 14 points with like 30 seconds remaining. They score a touchdown, recover an onside kick, throw a Hail Mary and tie it all in the final 30 seconds. And it was Sean Hill that finished it off because Stafford got injured.
I do remember that part. I remember that Stafford did not finish that game. Um, like what a weird team. Like Matthew Stafford. I'm so mad the Lions never did anything like of value with him as their quarterback because man, could you imagine if the Lions managed to go on a playoff run with Stafford under center? Like how chaotic an NFC championship game with him would have been. Like
Yeah,
even that
it's hard
Rams.
to imagine. Yeah, it's just hard to imagine because like the way the Lions are now, if you put Stafford behind this team, there's such a balance. Like they're always in command of games, right? They're always setting the tone. They're always in control, and it's just so opposite of what so much of the
Yeah.
Stafford era was. Like if you had to pinpoint for me the most Lions era Stafford games, like or Stafford era Lions games, it might be that Titans game, the fake spike Dallas game, like that one. And remember the one in Minnesota, the Golden Tate
Oh, that
flip
was
into the end zone one.
that one was funny
Didn't they have to drive like 30, 40 yards in about 12 seconds to set up a Prater like 59-yarder to send it to overtime
with no timeouts.
with no timeout? Yeah,
They
like
just
it
it was
just
just a strike to Marvin Jones, and then everyone sprints up to Spike to set up a like Prater kick from the heavens to send that to OT. I remember that game was funny because I was that was back when I played hockey. And I remember the game that I was playing started as the Vikings took the lead with 12 seconds to go. And so I go into my game being like, Lions lost, that sucks. And then I come back after the game, it's like, no, the Lions won. How did that happen? Um, it's yeah, Stafford is an agent of chaos. Like he's not the biggest agent of chaos. Jordan Love is rivaling him at this point, but um, like some of those games, man, where like that's why
remember do you remember the Falcons one in London where they're
yeah.
down like 21 nothing, they rally, then Falcons take the lead, then Lions drive to set up the game-winning field goal. Prater misses the
And
field
then
goal,
there's a
but it was a
penalty,
delay of
or
game.
was it delay a game
It
or
was a
yeah,
del
yeah.
Yes, they didn't get the snap off. So the Falcons were celebrating, and then they were like, "No, it's a delay of game." And they're like, "Can we decline it?" And they're like, "Well, no, the play never actually happened. We
Yeah.
blew it dead. You just didn't hear the whistle." They Brack Prater up, and then he makes the second try.
The Lions were
Basically
simultaneous.
the whole 2016 season. Remember
Yeah.
all the comebacks in that one? Like the Eagles, the Redskins, the Colts, the Vikings one. I mean, there were just so many that year, and it was just the theme of that whole era was like every week is a ridiculous game. Maybe we'll win it, maybe we'll lose it, but there will be many lead changes. There will be many frantic comeback attempts, and it will give you a heart attack every single week.
That year, I'm pretty sure they had one win that wasn't a comeback, and it was the game in New Orleans. Um, like it
Yeah.
was that was a weird year. And then the Lions go they with all these comebacks, they're 9-4, one of the best teams in the league, remarkably. And then Stafford like breaks his thumb in his throwing hand, and then they're terrible down the stretch and miss the playoffs, or they make the
He,
playoffs but then lose to Seattle.
yeah, he couldn't throw the ball
Yeah,
at
that's bad.
all
That's very bad.
after that point. Well, part of it was the schedule too. Remember they played the Giants, who were a wild card team. That was like the last decent Eli team. Then they played Dallas, right in Dallas, and that was Dak's rookie year when they were like 13-3. I just remember Zach Zenner was really good for the first half of that game, and then they like faded in the second half, and then they hosted Green Bay at home on Sunday Night Football in Week 17 to try and win the NFC North. And
Not
we know
not
how
good.
those ones usually went.
Yeah. And that game in Seattle is still one of the most infuriating games I've witnessed, because that was the one where I forget which Seattle player it was, but had like this one-handed catch in the end zone while he's face masking Quandre Diggs, but they called it
Yep.
defensive pass interference.
Yeah, he catches it with one hand, and he's got like the full face mask, just like
Like,
yanking the guy
his
down
whole
with the
head is
other.
like sideways because of it, and it's a defensive pass interference. Peak NFL. That was yeah. Those were the. I'm so glad that we've moved on beyond. It's weird because the Lions have just become the anti-Stafford team with Goff and in this rebuild, where everything that Stafford and those teams were, they are now the opposite. They are no longer relying on an elite quarterback to kind of be a gunslinger and lead them to comeback victories. They have a good offensive line. They have a great run game. They have a capable defense. I guess Stafford had like 1 or 2 years of a capable defense, but it's very interesting to see how far we've come.
It's definitely been a glow up, but we don't unfortunately get the some of the memories, I guess. Like the last couple of years, 2022 down the stretch, there were some frantic ones because they weren't as good. But like last year, it was really basically that Bears game at home was the only like
The playoff
true
games,
Stafford. Yeah, the playoff. But like you
even
expect those
then,
to be close, but like,
yeah.
and they still weren't that crazy. So we've graduated. We've moved up from the mediocrity of 8-8 perpetually, where every game is close because you're not very good, to many games aren't close because you are really good, and that is a better feeling to have.
It's a very good problem to have, yeah. Um, Moving on to our weekly roundup of NFL stories, we'll start with Matthew Stafford and the Rams taking down the Vikings on Thursday Night Football, doing the Lions a big favor. And this is one where you get to do a victory lap because you had flagged, hey, veteran QBs should be able to figure out this gimmicky defense. And lo and behold, a veteran QB figured out the Vikings defense and led his team to a victory.
Yeah, I had two victory laps this week. This was the
Yeah,
first one
we'll talk about the other one
chronologically
later.
that happened on Thursday night. But yeah, Stafford looked really good against this Vikings defense. He was able to slice and dice them up. Definitely, the Rams were the better team in that game. They deserved to win that game. It was nice to see our boy Blake Corum from Michigan have 4 carries and I believe a catch in that game. He hasn't been used too much this season by LA, but that was something I noted. Um, and outside of that, I don't have too much else to say. It was a deeply funny ending to the game with the obvious face mask safety, but I think someone tweeted that their win probability was like 1% at that point, which made sense. They were going to have to drive 98 yards and get a 2-point conversion just to send it to overtime in about a minute. What was it, like 15 or something like that? Minute
Yeah.
30 with no timeouts, I believe. So maybe there
You're
was one timeout.
the so like even in the world where Vikings fans can stop their complaining and they get the call, they move up to the 17-yard line. Okay, go 83 yards now. Like,
Yeah,
and get a
they had
2-pointer.
a long they had a long way to go. So the Rams deserve to win that game. Nice to see the Vikings drop another one. The Lions hangover
Still
continues.
real.
Building evidence for our case file.
Well, and if we want to even go one step further, the Cowboys, despite the bye week, still lost to the Niners. So no team has won their next game following the Lions, even if there's a bye week.
Hey, they lost to the bye week too, so
That's true.
they're on a 2-game losing streak.
So the Lions hangover is certainly becoming this weird phenomenon. Now this is do you want to do Packers or Bears first?
Yeah, we should do the Bears. I mean, we can save Packers till the preview at the end.
All right. Well, the Bears, after getting outplayed the entire game, the Commanders managed to blow the lead. Caleb Williams leads them down the field, and it's Roshan Johnson, I think, scores a go-ahead touchdown. All hope seems lost. There's no justice in the world except for the Maryland Miracle, as the Bears do not heed Alex's advice and don't blitz on a Hail Mary. Tyreek Stevenson showboats during the play, only to run back into action and deflect the ball up to the guy he was supposed to be covering. The worst possible way for the Bears to lose that game if you're a Bears fan. Everything gone in an instant. just take us through that ending.
Well, so first of all, before the victory lap, I have the mea culpa, which is that I actually didn't see this play live because I
Oh.
changed the channel. I was watching a lot of this game, and then the Bears take the lead, and I'm like, yeah, Commanders are probably cooked, but they've got at least some chances, and they do very little with those chances, and they get up. I think it was after the 2nd and 10 where they pick up 11 yards to get to the 35 with 6 seconds left. I'm like, what are they going to do in 6 seconds to get 65 yards? And the Red Wings were playing the Oilers, so I changed the channel, and then I received some texts. So then I flipped the channel back, and like I got back to it as like the players in the end zone are celebrating, and the announcers are like, "Oh my God, I can't believe what just happened." I'm like, "What happened? What happened?" And then for about 45 seconds to a minute and a half, let's say, the CBS doesn't show any replays, and I'm just on Twitter frantically scrolling to see the play, to see if, because I know it's obviously a Hail Mary. That's the only way it could have worked. But I'm like, I have to see this tape. I have to see the tape. Did they rush 3? Did they rush 3? Did they rush 3? And then I see it, and I'm just like, yes, yes.
I have, like, there's very few times in like an NFL season where I will just maniacally laugh at what happened. That was one of them. Like, I was watching that, like, I was watching the end of that game, the end of Red Zone, which, by the way, after the Lions game was over, Red Zone was absolutely amazing to watch as the 1 o'clock games wound down. But I'm
Yeah,
watching.
that last like the 20 minutes of those 1 o'clock games was like,
Oh my lord, insane.
it was pure red zone on crack, basically.
Yeah. But I'm watching that Bears the last play, and I'm like, oh, the stupid Bears win again. This is like, I hate this. No one in the NFC North is gonna lose a game ever again. And then this throw, I there's always this I harken back to, and there's an old AJ Green Hail Mary that was kind of similar, where it's a throw and then it gets tipped up, and the one receiver that just stood behind the pile just gets the easiest catch in the world because everyone else jumped at the ball on the first chance, and no one's there to clean it up. So that was truly, truly hilarious. I was literally just shocked with laughter after that one.
Yeah, the play it did kind of resemble there's playing college football, the prayer at Jordan Hare,
Mm.
which was 1 week or 2 weeks before the kick six when Auburn 2013 was God's football team for the course of a couple weeks. Um, but that one was two DBs on like a go route banging into each other, attempting to intercept it. And it goes up in the air, and the other guy catches, and the receiver catches it all alone and then runs. But similar vibe to this one. This is more of a mosh pit than just a couple guys, but funny Hail Mary all the same. My note on the Hail Mary, besides the rushing three, they spied Jaden Daniels on a Hail Mary.
You always got to be aware of when he's going to run.
We got to prevent the 15-yard scramble with 2 seconds left and the 65 yards to go. I mean, what in...
I mean, what? Hey, clearly they did not have confidence that their 6 DBs back in the end zone could make a tackle.
Yeah, it just... completely nonsensical, and it does kind of make you wonder. Something I've been wondering for a little while is like, does this Bears staff have it?
No.
I mean, I know their defense got better last year after they got Montez Sweat in that trade. I think that bought them some more time, but it just doesn't seem like these guys are going to be, in a hypothetical world where the Bears are a Super Bowl contender with Caleb Williams at quarterback, it really does not feel like this coaching staff is the staff that will be in place when that day comes to pass.
Well, so there's a few things. First of all, the Bears offense was completely horrible this whole game. And after the game, there was a play where the Bears were on the 1 yard line and they handed it off to an offensive lineman, I'm pretty sure, and fumbled. And after the game, Matt Eberflus stands up there instead of doing like a normal coach thing and being like, yep, we like just the coaching staff takes the blame, takes the ownership for the loss. No, they blamed the players. They blamed the offensive players for their lack of execution, which is exactly how I would want to treat my rookie quarterback that is supposed to be the savior of the franchise, is put it all on him. You didn't do a good enough job. Help us win more. Like, and now the flip side of this is rumors have begun to pop out that supposedly Ben Johnson wanted the Chicago job, but they elected to keep Matt Eberflus. We'll see if that was true after this season, because I don't know if the Bears missed the playoffs after the start that they had. I imagine Eberflus is gone. Shane Waldron is probably gone. And I imagine if that's the case, Ben Johnson will be a head coaching candidate once again. If he wants it, he might have a chance at it. But yeah, Bears coaching staff, very bad. Very, very bad.
Not good. And it drops them to 4-3 on the year. They're definitely still in the wild card hunt, but they do kind of seem like a team that, to me, is going to probably play their way out of the wild card picture, just because, as we mentioned in previous shows, their schedule is very difficult down the stretch. They have not played a single NFC North team, while they have played the entire AFC South, as well as the Carolina Panthers. So, kind of feels like they're going to end up 7-10 or something like that to me.
This week will be very telling to me of who they are, and also the Cardinals, who they play. Whoever wins that Cardinals and Bears game, I will say that team has a chance. And whoever loses, I'll say you're probably done. Because they both have 4 wins right now. If the Bears lose, they'll be 4-4. And then, so they have Cardinals this week, then Patriots. And then they have every NFC North team the 3 weeks after that. So have fun with that.
Plus at San Francisco.
That is just absolutely brutal. Like, yeah, you have 3 weeks. You go Packers, Vikings, both at home, to be fair. And then at Lions. Then at Niners, at Vikings versus Lions. And you know, we talk about the Vikings defense, how it's a bit of a gimmick. To a rookie quarterback, that is going to be something to be reckoned with. So that is going to be quite the there's a legitimate chance the Bears go on what, a 6-game losing streak, and then Seahawks and Packers will close it out. You might lose 8. You could lose out like that, and Eberflus gets fired, and Chicago celebrates like they should have been a playoff team this year. I don't know. We'll see. We shall see. Moving on to another NFC North team, the Packers barely survive the Jacksonville Jaguars. Then they also potentially lost Jordan Love. Well, they did lose him for the last part of the game, and they possibly have lost him for this week against the Lions. And yet, for some reason, no one can defend the Malik Willis read option. I do not understand this. I don't know what kind of voodoo magic Matt LaFleur is working with, but it is the most unstoppable play of all time.
Well, we do have to clarify that the no one can stop the Malik Willis read option. The no one there refers to the AFC South. those are the teams that he has faced. So we might need to see it against some better opponents. But yeah, they get bailed out in this one. I don't know. Part of it feels like the Packers are lucky. On the other hand, both their losses are close, so they're 4-2 in one-score games. Not like crazy luck or anything there. Yeah, I would have liked to see the Jags pull this out, but again, Jaguars are the Jaguars for a reason. So it is what it is.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, they had their two Malik Willis wins. One was barely beating the Colts, and the other one was destroying the Titans that the Lions also just destroyed. So, AFC South bad. Lions get to play everyone in that division too. So, hopefully they can make quick work of them. Texans will be a nice test in Week 10 because they have a good passing offense. But, yeah, the Packers are, I don't know, we'll say, I don't want to say lucky to get out of this one, but they definitely could have lost this game, and that is a bit of an indictment considering how bad the Jaguars are.
Outside of that, the other games to note that I had written down here, we got a big transitive property of football victory over the 49ers this week as the 49ers defeated Dallas by 6 points, fending off a late game surge there. I don't have too many notes on that. Cowboys don't look very good. Niners seem okay, but still wounded. The other one I had written down here, Atlanta, 31-26 over Tampa Bay. That's a big result because Atlanta now has the tiebreak over Tampa. So they've got a one-game lead in the division, and because of the tiebreak, it's basically a two-game lead. Yeah. So, yeah.
The other ones I had written down, first of all, it's our weekly laugh at the Jets for being awful. They're dead. The Jets are dead. And so we get to celebrate Aaron Rodgers' demise because we hate Aaron Rodgers, and it's always a good time when Aaron Rodgers suffers. Aside from that, I did want to take a second to just talk about the Colts conundrum. Anthony Richardson, last week, in a game, pulls himself out because he's too tired. He was too tired after running, and so he had to pull himself out for a play or two. Comes back in. After the game, the Colts are fed up, and now they are benching him, not just for 1 week. They are benching him the rest of the season because they want Joe Flacco to lead them to a potential wildcard berth. Now, for this week, I get it. Joe Flacco, he's a veteran QB. He can maybe do some stuff against the Vikings defense. Hopefully he does. That would be hilarious. You're benching last year's 4th overall pick for the rest of the season when he, more than anything, needs reps. This is one of the most backwards decisions I've seen in a bit. I don't really get this one, and the Colts are becoming a laughingstock very quickly.
So, full disclosure, I don't think I've watched Anthony Richardson play any full games. I've seen clips, but I don't watch the Colts because I have self-respect. So, I can't give a lot of takes on Richardson at the moment. I was actually interested to watch him against the Vikings because that would be the first time that I'd be like, oh, it's a national TV game and they're playing someone that is interesting. But so much for that. For the stats here, 4 touchdowns, 7 picks. It doesn't seem like he's played very well. His completion percentage, woeful at 44.4%. It's one of those things where if you're going to bench Richardson for a week to say, oh, he needs to win the locker room back or whatever after pulling himself out of a game, etc., I could understand that. If they're going to ride Flacco the rest of the way, it really does feel like you are prioritizing your short-term gains over the long-term picture, which is odd when you drafted Anthony Richardson. Do we not remember what the context was here? This is not Andrew Luck. Like, this guy was drafted with everyone knowing it was a Josh Allen, maybe a bad quarterback becomes good at some point in the future kind of guy. It was a guy you were going to have to swallow the bad with the good for it to pay off. And if you're going to set him for Flacco, I'm not going to argue that that is the wrong decision for 2024. It certainly seems like if you want Joe Flacco or you want the Indianapolis Colts to make the playoffs this year, Joe Flacco is your quarterback. I don't think you can really doubt that. But there is the question of you are sort of ignoring the long-term picture here, and that's odd when you give up the draft capital they did to move up and then take a guy like that.
Yep. So we'll see if they change their minds. Well, I think if Flacco comes in and they lose 3 in a row, they go to 4-7 or whatever, then it's like the season's pretty much lost. Okay, we can put Richardson back in. Weirdly enough, a Flacco injury is probably the best thing that could happen to them this week because they need Richardson to play. I don't know how you look at 2025 and 2026 and beyond and say we have hope unless Richardson gets better and you need him to get reps to get better. And it's not even like it's all bad. He still is having splash plays and he's showing the flashes of what you want to see. And they're just like, nope, not good enough. So I have no idea what they're doing, man. No idea.
I
Uh,
think it's kind of an indictment of the sort of unserious nature of the AFC at the moment that this
mm,
is happening. Like, I feel like if the Colts are in the NFC, they probably don't do this. Maybe they do. The Colts seem like a pretty bad organization at the moment. People are not too complimentary of Ursay, let's just say that, as an owner, and I know there's some shenanigans going on, so maybe they're just clueless. But I do feel like if they're in the NFC at 4-4, you look at this team and you're like, they're not making the playoffs.
no.
You think this Indianapolis Colts team is beating out, you know, one of Buccaneers, Bears, Eagles, Vikings, Packers? No, we don't believe that.
No.
Okay, we can just do our thing and develop our guys, but in the AFC, can they make the playoffs? Yeah, sure. With Joe Flacco quarterback, why not? Are they demonstrably worse than the Broncos or Chargers?
Nope. It is
Maybe. I mean, I
so
don't know.
it is so so funny to me that this week the the Broncos play. I think the Broncos play the Ravens, don't they? Yeah, the Broncos are playing the
They do,
Ravens,
yeah.
and that is currently a matchup of two 5-3 teams. This the NFL sucks. This is absolutely hilarious that these two teams are currently entering with the same record in week 9.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their schedule for the Colts. They have Vikings this week, Bills and Lions on the schedule. Maybe swallow some L's there, but beyond that, Jets, Pats, Broncos, Titans, Giants, Jaguars.
Is that Colts Broncos game going to determine a wild card spot?
It probably will.
This sport sucks. um, so moving on from that, we had a couple of trades happen this week as the trade deadline nears. Josh Uche, who we had highlighted as a potential option for the Lions in kind of that sub package pass rusher role, he goes for, I think it was a 6th round pick to the Kansas City Chiefs, who they continue to load up for another Super Bowl run, and they are very scary defense. Would not look forward to playing them at all. And the Vikings, in lieu of Christian Darrisaw going down with a season-ending injury, they trade for Cam Robinson to plug that left tackle hole. So they downgrade from Darrisaw, but they still get starting caliber left tackle. Do you have any takes on either of these trades?
I mean, the Robinson one, solid work by the Vikings. It's a rental guy, probably going to walk after the season, so you didn't give up a lot to get him. I would have gotten in on the Uche price. It was pretty low. Otherwise, it's kind of they can't keep getting away with this meme with other teams giving players to the Chiefs. But oh well, not our problem. If we have to see the Chiefs, it will be in the Super Bowl, and at that point, we'll just be happy to be there. I think that will be the general tone of the Lions fan base. Do you have Any takes on the Lions now as the number one DVOA team by a sizable margin?
Offensively, it makes sense. Defensively, mm, I think they're probably a little bit worse than the DVOA indicates. Special teams are special teams. Like, I don't know. I think the Lions are probably the best offense in the league. They're
Yeah.
probably a top 16 defense,
Yeah.
and they're a pretty good special teams unit, barring Jake Bates forgetting how to hit a kick accurately. So we'll see. I mean, for now, that's awesome. I still like. I've seen some power rankings that have the Lions as the number one team in the league. I am not going to be comfortable putting anyone over the Chiefs until the Chiefs lose in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think at this point in time, the Lions are the best team in the NFC.
Yep.
We'll see how they can do against the Packers this week without Hutchinson and all that stuff, but I don't know how to weigh it against the AFC and the Chiefs and the Bills. Not really my area of concern because,
We have
again, not in our conference.
we'll have one game to determine how strong the NFC is versus the AFC. That's all that matters.
Yeah,
So
pretty much. So, but it is nice to see they were
yeah,
number one on, I think NFL.com power rankings for the first time in history. They were number one. It makes you wonder why NFL.com didn't rank them number one in 1953, but we'll never know the answer to that question. So,
now moving on to something that no one expected to be talking about this week, but suddenly it has become a problem. Michigan gun laws. Because Jamison Williams is in the news again, even though he was not playing this week. Because a few weeks ago, before the suspension, he almost got arrested for carrying a concealed weapon without a permit. He was his brother's car or his friend's car, who had a permit, but the gun is registered to Jamison Williams, which have a good gun, good for you, I guess. Like, have fun, go crazy. But without a permit is a felony and could land him up to 5 years in prison. Um, Now, first offenders, from what I've seen, usually plea this out to a misdemeanor with probation. But the important headline: Jamison Williams was not arrested, and now the police are reviewing why he was not arrested. And it appears to be because, so the way I understand the story is a routine stop. Jamison Williams and the other person in the car disclose that there are weapons in the car. They then, Jamison Williams, being quite frankly a child, is like, I play for the Detroit Lions, treat me special. And so they call their sergeant because that's what the police are trained to do whenever there is a case that could potentially get media attention. They want to go through the proper channels, make sure they do things right. Sergeant shows up on the scene, happens to be a Detroit Lions fan. And there is it is alluded to that the sergeant might have made some calls, pulled some strings to kind of avoid arresting Jamison Williams because he is a Lions fan. And now this entire situation is under review, and we will see. We kind of just have to wait and see how the legal process will play out. The Lions and the NFL were made aware of this weeks ago. So there's no issue on that front. It is really just a case of Jamison Williams being in the news for the wrong reasons yet again. And I'm getting a little sick of this despite how much I like this player.
weird story. You see the headline, you read through it. I think the best sentiment is that you just expressed, which is that we need the I don't know what you want to call this, shenanigans, whatever this is. It does need to be toned down at some point. The story itself isn't a particular big deal. It kind of seems like a waste of everybody's time. Like, yeah, he should have the permit, but this is a paperwork crime, basically, rather than like a real crime. And in the NFL, where we have people that are, driving 170 miles an hour in a 35 neighborhood and committing other worse crimes than that, and they're still playing, like, I just am not going to get that upset about the actual infraction here. If JMO isn't shooting someone and he's not pointing the gun at people in the Ja Morant style, then I don't really care beyond that. He, again, should be more careful with the permit and stuff. He's certainly wealthy enough to pay the rather low cost to get the permit. It's just kind of in the same vein of all of the other things, which is that like this isn't a bad person.
No.
Like this isn't he's not committing heinous crimes, and there are plenty of players in the NFL that do that. So we can't like come down in that sense against him. It's just a pattern of weird, dumb stuff. Like that's the best way to sum it up, right? Like the gambling thing. He wasn't betting on Lions games, so it's not like he did the worst thing, but he crossed the line in some, minor capacities. The PEDs thing. He wasn't juicing, right? He wasn't like his head hasn't grown 7 times in size like Barry Bonds, and he walks around roided out. Like seems like he didn't tell them about a prescription medication or something of that nature. Small infraction, and here we go again. Didn't shoot anybody, just happened to not have the permit. Like every single time something pops up, it is the lowest possible version of the implied offense. But it's still a thing, and it's still a story, and it still distracts us, and it still distracts the team and everything else going on. And that's just what needs to be dealt with. And I don't know exactly how you deal with that, whether you get him, I don't know, a secretary or someone to personal assistant, bodyguard. I don't know. Someone. It seems like he's maybe somebody that just doesn't have a great command of attention to detail, and just a little scatterbrained. And maybe there's a way they can help with that because it does need to be dealt with.
Well, and like, so there's two sides to this. Like, the defense of Jameson Williams is he's a 23-year-old kid doing stupid things that a lot of people in his age range do. Like, he's maybe like, he's a young kid in America and wants a gun. A lot of people in America have guns, all right? Like, it's not anything crazy, and
I did, by the way, love the line from that story of the like, I have a gun, I live in Detroit.
which I mean, fair, I guess. Like, go for again. Like, I don't have a problem with him owning a gun. I don't have a problem with like. It's just all this stuff adds up. But he's a 23-year-old kid, so I'm willing to cut him some slack. The one thing that I actually don't like, genuinely hate about this story is the fact that he thinks playing for the Lions gives him special treatment. I never want to
Well,
hit like.
he was kind of right.
I mean, he was, which is stupid. But like at the end of the day, right? Like professional athletes in general don't really have a good grasp on the real world. We see this especially in hockey. We see this because kids are taken at like age 14 and taken out of school, and then they're raised in hockey leagues in the CHL and eventually the NHL, and so they don't really like. And then the NFL, you're basically when you're in college, yeah, but not half the collegiate athletes don't really care about being in college. They just want to play in the NFL one day. And I'm assuming JMO is one of them because, he's anyone who doesn't stay for their senior year, it's usually not because they finished their degree early. Let's put it that way. And I think a lot of athletes struggle with their grasp on the real world compared to the bubble that they live in as athletes. Jameson Williams, I fully believe, is one of them. And I just absolutely despise the childish behavior of, I play for the Detroit Lions, take it easy on me. Like, it's stupid. It's stupid and childish.
Did you ever see what the reason for the traffic stop was? I read somewhere it was speeding, but I never saw that
I haven't seen it,
officially.
no.
Yeah, that was the one part of the story that was kind of missing to me. I would be curious to know what happened there.
I don't know, maybe it's a Tyreek Hill situation where it's like he's speeding, but then the cops just are like, get out of the car. I don't know. Traffic stops happen. It's just is what it is. There's no, I don't think the only thing the police did wrong, it seems like, is not arrest him. Weirdly enough, I imagine, based on the fact that they're reviewing the case, Jameson Williams might be arrested in the next couple weeks, in which case he'll just turn himself in. He'll probably plead this thing out. I don't think he's at risk of missing any time
No.
or missing any or being suspended again. Um, like, I don't know. It's just unfortunate that we have to take time to address another Jameson Williams thing.
Yeah, I mean that's the worst part of it, really.
Yeah. So I'll move on from that because we've probably given that too much oxygen. So we'll move on to a much more important thing, the Lions and the Packers. Detroit's most heated rival in Lambeau Field. This is after a 4 o'clock game Sunday afternoon. This is a big one because the Lions currently have half a game on the Packers. Lions are 6-1, Packers are 6-2. Even in wins, Lions have played fewer games. If the Lions are able to win this game, they'll have a game and a half on the Packers and a tiebreaker. And the Packers already lost to the Vikings, so the Lions have that tiebreaker going so far as well. If you can have the Packers start 0-2 in the division, that would be enormous. There is a lot on the line for future, like as it pertains to the rest of the season, on the line in this game. How are we feeling going into the Packers game? I should say, if Jordan Love plays, how are we feeling going into the Packers game?
I'm feeling okay. I would really like Hutchinson to be available for this game. I think it would be very useful, but unfortunately not happening. So I don't really know what to make of the Packers. They haven't played that many teams that I really respect, and honestly, I think they're 0-2 among the teams that I do respect, but they were reasonably close games in the Philadelphia and the Minnesota Vikings game. I don't remember if there was anything else in there. I know they played the AFC South. Did they beat the Cardinals? And
I don't know if they played the. I'll check their
they did play
schedule.
the Cardinals. I don't remember who their other game was against. But anyway, um,
So
as we mentioned,
they lost to the Eagles, beat the Colts, beat the Titans, lost to the Vikings, beat the Rams, beat the Cardinals, beat the Texans, beat the
Rams. That's
Jaguars.
the other one. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, maybe the Rams, you can say, and that was a pretty competitive game, too. They look like a solid team. Offense, 5th in DVOA, defense, 12th. Offensively, we've talked a lot about Jordan Love on this show. If he plays, he will probably throw multiple interceptions, especially against a team like the Lions, given what he's shown this year. He'll also probably throw some touchdowns, and it will be a pretty chaotic game. If Malik Willis plays, I don't really know what to say about that because we haven't seen him play any real teams. Do you have a thought on who you would rather see the Packers start at quarterback in this game?
Well, I'd rather them start Malik Willis.
I think that's still my take.
Like
I've seen people discussing it.
if the Lions cannot stop a Malik Willis read option, they deserve to lose the game. Plain and simple. Jordan Love poses more of a threat just simply because he is capable of throwing the ball. And the Lions, they haven't been tested a whole heck of a lot. They've been tested at times, but the Lions secondary is still their Lions corners are still not flawless. You could still pass on them a little bit. Run defense should hold Josh Jacobs relatively in check, but if Jordan Love plays, this game will be, I think, a real close one. If Malik Willis plays, the Lions should be able to win. Should hopefully, barring the Packers pass rush ruining our lives, would feel pretty good with
Yeah,
Willis.
I think the rushing game is going to be a big story here. The Packers running backs really haven't had a great year so far. Jacobs 4.6 yards per carry, Wilson 4.4 yards per carry. Okay. Defensively, their run defense is 10th, but they have some in total yardage. I think it's lower than that in DVOA. This feels like a game to establish the run and kind of control it from that standpoint. The other thing to note here is this is an outdoor game. Lions haven't had many of those this season.
How many have they had any? I'm pretty sure this is one of 3 outdoor games the Lions will play. It'll be Packers, Bears, and
Yeah, you're
49ers.
right about
This is
that.
the
Yeah,
first
so
outdoor game the Lions are playing.
weather looks mid 50s, maybe a little rainy. So this again could be a good running game. Yeah, it looks close. It looks like one that should be pretty competitive. I like the Lions' chances, but I think when you are the best team potentially in the NFC, then you like your chances every week, pretty much, and you're going to drop some along the way. But this feels like a fine game. Got to watch Jaden Reed. He's the big guy to circle on my list here. I mean, Romeo Dobbs is solid. Wicks, Watson, Melton, those guys are okay, but Reed is the big one to watch. This should be a very interesting game. Both teams very good at takeaways. That may end up being the deciding factor here.
So I do want to say the running backs averaging was 4.6 and 4.4. That's pretty solid. I hold that in a bit higher regard in terms of what they've been able to do this season. It just looks a lot worse because Jahmyr Gibbs is averaging 6.42 yards a carry, which is absolutely ridiculous. There's no way that keeps up. He'll probably come back down near that 5.5 range rest of the season, but Gibbs, you hope can give you some splash plays. You hope David Montgomery can give you some solid play between the tackles and kind of bully the Packers a little bit. And then it's really just going to come down to, can Jaden Reed torch the Lions safeties, or can the Lions safeties hold him in check when he runs deep routes? Or any Packers receiver. They all run deep routes. Christian, like, they're all fast. They all do jump balls, whatever. It's whether or not Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch are on their game roaming deep down the field. If they are, Lions are in good shape. If they're not, Lions might be in for a bit of a tough time offensively. I mean, I don't know. This is not a case of like first to 24 wins. I don't think. I think both teams will be, if Jordan Love plays, both teams will be able to score, I think. So it's probably gonna be close going into the fourth quarter. It's just gonna be whether or not the Lions can close it out, which they have a good track record of. But yeah, this is a game both teams should have circled. Packers obviously going into Thanksgiving last year were very pissed off at how the Lions had dominated them for the past couple of years and took it to them. Lions should be looking back at that Thanksgiving game with a little bit of vengeance in their hearts, and also it's the Packers. You always want to beat the Packers. So yeah, gonna be a good game. I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts aside from that?
Matchup of two teams from two of the top swing states in the U.S. election. If you live in the U.S., it will probably be the most insufferable broadcast of all time when it goes to commercials. So I recommend having the controller ready to flip to the red zone as soon as it goes to a commercial break.
Over under on political ads will be set at 16.5 in this broadcast.
That's definitely an over. It's going to be like 30 or more.
Yeah, I'm so happy that all this stuff will be done after Tuesday. Well, mostly done after Tuesday. We'll see.
The ads will be done over Tuesday. We'll put it that way.
The campaigning will be done after Tuesday. We'll see what happens.
So, yeah, this is going to be an interesting game, but Lions have played well in Lambeau over the last few years, which is nice to see, and hopefully we get one more win.
Exactly. So, if you've listened this far, please like the show, give us a rating on podcast, like the video, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. You can find me at ZachPayne41. You can find Alex at Alex_Drain. You can find the show on Twitter at Payne and Drain Show. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So we'll see you guys next week after this Packers game to recap it and preview the Texans as well. In the meantime, let's go Lions. Cheers, everyone.